Welcome back to Learn MoGraph. Today we're diving into two powerful tools that help bring your motion graphics to life, the speed and value graphs. These two essential components of After Effects assist in creating some awesome animations. Speed and value graphs allow us to control the motion of our elements with more precision than just standard keyframes, giving us full creative control over our animations. To understand what these graphs are doing, it helps to understand the difference between spacing and timing when it comes to animation. Spacing refers to how far an object moves between frames, and timing refers to how long it takes for said object to move between those keyframes. Let's take a look at this simple animation. We're going to use our Quick Menu plugin, linked in the description, to add the echo effect so we can better see what's going on. Now we need to change a couple parameters in our echo effect. Because our animation is 1 second long and our composition is at 24 frames per second, we're going to change the number of echoes to 24. And we're going to do a little math for the echo time. We'll take -1 and divide it by our frames per second, which is 24, to get -0.042. This value is negative because we're looking backwards in time. If we were to change it to a positive, the echoes would precede our animation. Now when we play this, we can see that we get 1 echo per frame of our animation. And if we go to our last keyframe, we can see that the echoes are spread out accordingly. Right now, we're working with linear keyframes, so we have a very uniform look to the spacing of our object. Let's turn off our echo effect for now. To access our graphs, we can either press Shift F3 on the keyboard, or we can click the little graph icon right here. When you first enter your graph editor, it won't look like much, but once we select a keyframed property, in this case our X position, After Effects brings up the graph relative to those keyframes. We're going to start with our speed graph. To make sure we're working with that, we'll click this button and select Edit Speed Graph. The speed graph represents how fast an object moves over time. It shows us the velocity of our animation, indicating where our animation is fast or slow. The higher the speed graph goes, the faster the animation. Right now, the line is straight across, indicating that our object is moving at the same speed from the first keyframe all the way to the last. If we turn back on our echo effect, you can see how that is represented. Let's see what happens when we ease these keyframes. We'll draw a selection box around our two keyframes, right-click, go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Now we have a nice round shape to our speed graph. When we look at the line, the closer to the baseline it gets, the slower the animation speed. And the higher up the graph our line reaches, the faster it goes. With our echo effect on, you can see that our object is bunched up at the beginning and end of our animation, meaning that it spends more time at those keyframes and less time in the middle, where it's more spaced out. We can turn off our echo effect and we can see what this looks like. So we have a slower start, fast through the middle, and it slows down towards the end. Now we can turn our echo effect back on, and we'll go to the end of our animation here so we can see all of our frames. And with the speed graph, we have these handles that allow us to control the acceleration and deceleration of our animation. These handles let us adjust the speed at which our object is moving between the keyframes. If we take this first handle and we drag it out to the extreme right, you can see that our object gets really slow at the start, but speeds up towards the end, where it has a little bit of a slowdown right before coming to a stop. And if we take our right side handle and drag that to the right as well, we can have our object hit a top speed right at the end of the animation. So it takes a really long time to get going, and then once it speeds up, it comes to an abrupt stop. Let's go back into our timeline view and duplicate our layer so we can see the difference adjusting the speed graph makes. And we'll move our duplicate layer up a little bit. We'll press U on our keyboard, and we'll select our keyframes, and we'll hold down Control or Command and click on them to convert them back into linear keyframes. And we'll turn off the echo effect on both of our layers. And when we watch these animations side by side, we can see that even though they both animate over the course of a single second, the one that we edited in the speed graph feels like it's going much faster. Now let's move over to the value graph. While the speed graph controls the velocity, the value graph controls the attributes or properties of our animation, such as position, scale, or rotation. In this case, we're going to stick with our X position property. Let's delete our duplicated layer and convert our keyframes on our original layer back to linear by selecting them and holding Control or Command and clicking on them. Now we'll click our graph icon and we'll go down to our options here and select Edit Value Graph. Each keyframe block on the value graph represents our layer's position at that exact point in time. Similar to the speed graph, we can easy ease our keyframes by selecting them and hitting either F9 on the keyboard or right-clicking, going to Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease. And if you want to get rid of our bounding box here, you click this little box right here. Now we can see our graph much better. And now that we've eased our keyframes, we have our Bezier handles again. These handles allow us to adjust the interpolation between the keyframes, influencing the smoothness and shape of our animation. If we bring our timeline indicator over the line and adjust these handles, we can see what it does to the position of our layer at this point in the animation. If we turn on our echo effect again, we can really see what this does and go through and really tweak these handles. If we go to the end of our animation again, we can see that even though our animation starts here, it shoots back and then overshoots where its final position is. So if we really want to add some extreme anticipation and overshoot, we can drag out these handles and create a pretty extreme S-curve. So say we want it to go to the edge of the composition on both ends, we can just drag these handles up and down, and using the echo effect, we can see where it starts and ends. Now if we turn our echo effect off and play our animation, we have a much more interesting animation now with just 2 keyframes instead of having to keyframe a first position, the anticipation position, the overshoot position, and the end position. And that's kind of the value, pun intended, of having our value graph. You can also take these and make it a little bit more subtle. So if you don't want to have it quite so extreme, you can bring it down a little bit. And as with the speed graph, the more extreme angle you put on these handles, the more exaggerated our animation will be. So if you wanted to have it just take off and then overshoot and come back, you can drag our first handle way up and maybe drag our second handle down a little bit. And again, this gives you the capability to do really neat animations with just a couple of keyframes by tweaking these Bezier handles. That's a wrap on our overview of the speed and value graphs in After Effects. By mastering these powerful tools, you'll have the ability to fine-tune your animations and bring your creativity to life. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more exciting After Effects tutorials. As always, feel free to leave your questions or comments down below. Thanks for watching and happy animating!